Hi everyone, welcome back to Brookdale Farm. We are at home today, but we've got a bit of an interesting project to do. We've got this 1937 Case Model L tractor that we've got to try and get going. Now, this was used in the Eastern Wheat Belt in Western Australia from 1937. It was owned by the same family all the way up to the 1980s when it was donated to a collector. When the collector, I believe, had it running, but when the collector died, the grandson of the original owner has bought this tractor back and wants to have it running again. This tractor is in beautiful original condition. It has all sorts of things you just don't see very often, like the Case logo on the side here, and it's so complete that in fact it still has the canvas blind in here in the radiator. I don't think I have ever seen an original one of them before. Now, this has a 4-cylinder petrol kerosene engine in it that's 6.6 litres. And I believe it's around 45 horsepower. For 1937, this was actually quite a big tractor. Now, when you're running them on, you start these on petrol and run them on petrol until they are warm, and then you switch them over to kerosene. Now, kerosene was about half the price of petrol, but you needed the tractor to stay running hot. So if you were running it under a very light load, say you were pulling a sickle bar mower or a reaper binder, you would use this canvas blind to blank off more of the radiator to keep it at operating temperature. If you didn't do this, the kerosene didn't vaporize properly, and you ended up with kerosene contaminating your engine oil, and that thins it out, and you need to do oil changes far more often. So if we'll wander around the back of the tractor now and just have a look from the driver's platform. Now, interestingly, this one actually has a PTO on it. Now, you can see it's bright orange compared to the rest of them. This is not original. This has been put on during its working life, but they did come out with a PTO as an optional extra. Also, a feature I haven't seen particularly often is that the seat swings backwards and forwards. Back in this era, not all your machinery operated on the same side. Now, all your machinery, your mowers, your PTO harvesters, all of that sort of thing operates with you looking off to the right-hand side. The reaper binders and things like that would often be on the left-hand side. So you would want to be able to swing your seat so that you could get a better view looking back at your machine. You sit quite high up on here. The controls are pretty simple on this. The steering wheel here, you've got a 3-speed gearbox down here. Here's your gear lever, bit hard to see from this angle. This tractor has a hand clutch. So push it to disengage it, pull it back to engage it. And it doesn't have much in the way of brakes. This here is your brakes, and it's more of a hand brake than anything. There's not really much there. We also have a lever down here, which is to engage and disengage the PTO. And get them in view. We've got these 2 levers here. Now, one of these is your spark, your ignition timing, and the other one is your throttle. Now, one other thing you don't see very often either is these decals. This is an original decal and it's still on here. So this tractor has been shedded its whole life, and it's amazingly original. Alright, I'll jump back off. Now the engine on this is seized. I've pulled out all the spark plugs and put some diesel and oil down the cylinders. The spark plugs do not indicate there has been any water down in the cylinders at all. It also has a tin on the exhaust. Now I believe this tin dates back to at least the 1950s and possibly even earlier than that. So it's been parked inside. It's also always had a tin on the exhaust. So this helps to stop getting condensation down into your exhaust. Even when it's inside, there's still a good idea. So I think it has just been sitting for so long that the engine is tight. So there's two covers down here. There's two on the other side as well. We're going to whip them off quickly and just make sure that it hasn't thrown a conrod or anything silly like that. There's also this plate on the bottom of the sump here. This is an oil filter inside here. So we're going to drop the oil, well, assuming everything looks all right in there. We're going to drop the oil out. We're going to do an oil change. Probably give it a rinse out with petrol. Take this filter out and clean that up. It also has an oil bath air cleaner. So this section down here is full of oil and you need to drop this off. Well, they recommend daily. You can see up here. Warning, remove reservoir daily. Clean and fill to mark with thin used engine oil. So we're going to drop that off and clean that out as well. And then we're going to see if we can get it turning. Now, it's been sitting with diesel in the cylinders for a couple of weeks now, so I'm hoping that if we just put a bit of extra pressure on the crank handle, that it will just start turning and rolling over. Okay, so we've got these side covers off and everything looks pretty good in here. I can see, if we look, I don't think I can show you on the camera because I'm not going to get it in there very easily. There's a little bit of rust around the bottom of the cylinders, so there's been a little bit of moisture in there at some stage. But hopefully now that it's been soaking, we'll be able to just get it turning pretty easily. The other thing we're going to do before we get too carried away turning it, this is the oil pressure gauge here. We're just going to undo this fitting here, and with an oil can, we're going to pump as much oil down here as we can before we start doing anything else. Because it's been sitting for so long now, all of these lines are going to be empty, and it just helps sort of prime everything and make it pick up the oil a bit quicker and get it circulating around the engine sooner when we do get it turning, and just helps to pre-lubricate some things if we can get a bit of oil in here. Okay, so I've taken the cover off the other side here, and on closer inspection, if I can get the camera in here, unfortunately we can see a bit of rust up there around that cylinder. Now these have wet liners in them, these engines, so hopefully it is leaking around the O-ring. It looks like water has been leaking in there. Hopefully it is leaking around the O-ring, but it almost looks like there's a fault in the casting in there that is leaking. Anyway, that is a little way down the track. We'll see if we can get it turning first. Okay, so I've had a bit of a poke around in here, and I've cleaned it up a little bit around there. I can't work out whether this is a fault in the casting here that's where it's leaking, or whether somebody has already had a go at getting in there to try and fix it by putting a bolt or something in there. But I'd say that is certainly going to leak for us. But we'll sort that out a little bit later on. First, we'll see if we can even get it to turn. Okay, so I've pumped some oil down the oil pressure gauge line, and I can see that coming out the rear main bearing, so I know that I've got some clean oil circulating around the engine. Now I've also taken the spark plugs out, and I thought I would just show you these beautiful original or old KLG spark plugs. Now these are quite a large spark plug. They've got a very big diameter down there. These were common on all of the old tractors. They're a two-piece spark plug. So this bit here unscrews, and you can take the porcelain part out to give this a really good clean, and you can get in here to give it a really good clean as well. You can still buy these as a two-piece spark plug, I believe, but they are quite expensive. They're about $30 or $35 each last time I looked. That was quite a while ago. You can also get them as a single piece. They are still expensive. They're about $25 each as a single piece plug. But it's really, you do still see a few of these two-piece plugs around, but they're getting rarer. All right, so we'll now put a bit of pressure on the crank handle and see if we can get this to start turning. I reckon that we probably will. There we go. That was a little bit easier than I had thought it would be. There we go. The engine is now turning. So now we're going to drain the oil, and we're going to put clean oil into it so that we know that as the oil pump starts turning, we're picking up clean oil to circulate around the engine. Okay, so this is the oil filter. It's just a brass gauze on it. It's got a bit of a hole in here that we'll probably look at fixing up a bit later on. The oil pump picks up through that hole there. We've made up a new cork gasket for it. So this just slots back in like this. We've also taken this opportunity to give the sump a good washout with a bit of petrol, because well, the working life of this tractor was probably 40 years or something like that. After that much working time, and then another more than that sitting around, or that much again sitting around not doing anything, there's a fair bit of muck in the bottom of the sump. For a tractor this age, it's actually not too bad, but we have now given it a good clean out. So we'll put some oil in it now, and we'll see if we can crank it over and free it up a bit. So to fill this tractor up with oil, the oil filler is this cap here. And if we come down onto the side of the sump here, there's two level bungs here. So you unscrew them and you just fill it up until it just starts running out the top. When you're coming to check it, you want to make sure it's at least full up to the bottom one. We're just going to fill it up to the bottom one today, because we're going to be doing another oil change on this pretty soon. At hand cranking speed, we've already got 30 pounds of oil pressure. That's pretty good, and that means we've got oil circulating all the way around the engine through all the bearings. Next, we want to check and see if we've got any spark on our spark plug from a magneto over here. So we're just going to wind it over on the crank, and hopefully we'll get a spark on the spark plug. There we go, we've got one. Okay, so this is the cast base from the oil bath air cleaner, and it should be full up to this mark here with engine oil. It's always a good idea to wash this out when tractors have been sitting for a while, because they always fill up with insects and spiders and things like that that decide to wander down the air intake and drown in the oil. So we'll just give this a quick wash out now and put it back on. Okay, so we've got the covers back on the side of the engine. We've got some petrol in it now. We've put the spark plugs back in. So we're going to just turn it over and see if it's going to fire. It's going to smoke a fair bit when it does, because I'm pretty sure it's still got a fair bit of diesel in the cylinders that I put in to try and free it up. it's been a very successful day today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.